Okay, this is a screencast of an analysis of Battle Royal by Ralph Ellison. Battle Royal is an excerpt from his larger novel, The Invisible Man. And before we start talking about the story itself, I just want to talk about just a couple of things about this story. The narrator is an invisible man, and he calls himself the Invisible Man. Um, this story is very much concerned with the masks or roles or labels that people impose on one another in this society, and we'll talk about this New South in a little bit later when we look at just some comparisons of this New South. He says, "I was naive. I was looking for myself." And then he comes to the realization that he is nobody but himself. But first, he had to discover that he's an invisible man. He is aware, and it wasn't until much later when he was in college that he can look back on this event and is able to see it for what it was. But he knows that he is not seen as a human being by the leading white citizens in the town of Jefferson, not Jefferson, I'm sorry, that's Rose for Emily, the town that he lives in. So the basis of the story is that this young black male, he is very intelligent, and he is given a valedictorian speech at his own school for black people. And he receives an invitation to come and give his speech to the town's leading white citizens. And of course, everybody makes a big deal about it. And he goes to give his speech, the night that he goes to give his speech, and he is surprised to see a whole crew of young African American, some of his classmates there. And basically, they've all been invited to be a sport or entertainment for these upstanding, leading white citizens. You got all the doctors and lawyers and merchants in town. The most lily white men is what he calls them in town. And so he still doesn't really know. He's still very naive. He doesn't realize until things start to happen. And so they're crowded into this room, and they're led out into this larger room in a hotel, and they have put up a boxing ring. And all the white men of town, the big prominent white men, are thronged around this boxing ring, and they are drinking and smoking cigars and just stuffing themselves with food, and the whole atmosphere is very dark and smoky, and all these young black males are obviously they're afraid and not really understanding what's happening, and so this guy is still believing that he's there to be a guest speaker. But however, they're going to publicly humiliate them first. So the first thing that they do is they lead them into this room with this boxing ring, and they parade a young white woman around in front of them, knowing that she kind of represents everything that they will never have, regardless of how trashy she is. And she is trashy, make no mistake. I mean, she's got an American flag tattooed right above her private area, and she's a trashy woman, but she represents everything that they'll never be, even down to the American flag tattoo. Because she is white, she is given certain things that even these young black men will never have in this society. And so they parade this white woman out in front of them. And of course, the young men have a reaction to her because she's, beautiful and sensual, and she's parading around, and they're forced to look at her. And if they don't look at her, they're being verbally and physically abused by the white men to watch her parade around. I guess it's similar to the round women that come around and show what round it is in a boxing match, scantily clad and just there for entertainment. And so after that, they blindfold all of the young black men. They throw them into a ring, And basically, it's basically like the battle royal, I guess, in Fortnite that you have, where you battle to the end, and one person remains standing. That's the intention for this battle royal. Here, they blindfold them and then want them to beat the crap out of each other until only one man is left in the ring. And it's complete chaos, it's anarchy. Um, at first, the ones that are afraid, they are not swinging and not trying to hit, and then the crowd out around the ring is jeering and screaming at them and cussing at them and forcing them to fight, pushing them in the direction of each other, and it becomes like a melee. Like it's utter anarchy and chaos. So after that, after they battle to the end, the young man, the invisible man, is the only one. Him and another man are left, and this guy pretty much just beats the crap out of him. And they are all encouraged to come up to this mat to get their money for participating in the fight. And so it's a rug and it's on the ground, and they throw a bunch of coins and change and money on the rug. What they don't know is that the rug is electrified. They've electrified the carpet. And so they throw these coins on there. They force the boys down to their knees around it. And then they say go. And the boys are supposed to lunge for the money and collect the money. And of course, they're being electrified every time they try to touch a coin on the mat. After that, because if it couldn't get any worse, after that, they give each of the young African Americans $5 for their role. That's their reward for being entertainment for the white men. And they send them on their way, and then they let the invisible man come up and give his speech. And so he is still in this naive frame of mind that what he has to say is going to be powerful and change these white men's opinion of him if they hear how intelligent he is. And the whole time he's giving his speech, they're jeering and screaming and badgering and yelling and laughing at him, laughing at what he's saying. And so it clearly wasn't about him giving his speech because they wanted to hear it. It was so that they would have something else to entertain them for the evening. And so then finally, at the end of his speech, he receives a leather briefcase, and inside there's a scholarship to the local Negro college, and that's their reward for his participation in this evening. So I want to talk about breaking down just a couple of things. So it's ironic that these men are going to bestow a college scholarship on this boy and then simultaneously treat him worse than they would an animal. The story begins with the history of his family. His grandparents were slaves who were freed. This is right after the Reconstruction, so post-Emancipation Proclamation. His grandfather on his deathbed tells his father to keep up the good fight, live with your head in the lion's mouth, overcome them with yeses, undermine them with grins, agree them to death and destruction. And then his last words were, learn it to the youngins. So, and everybody thought the old man had gone out of his mind. A black man in society didn't stand a chance fighting racism openly, obviously. His grandfather was trying to tell him to pretend to play the white man's game, and only then could black people hope to accomplish anything. And if you were to get any dignity and self-respect out of it, it would have to come from within. And so that always rankled this young boy, this young invisible man, because he believed that it could be different, that things could be different. And that plays a huge role in his naivete. He believes that he's being honored. He believes that they want to hear what he has to say. And really, it's just another pawn in their entertainment. So their plan the whole night was to make these African Americans feel as uncomfortable and animal-like as possible. That was the plan with the blonde The blindfolded in the ring, fighting hysterically, in that anarchy of that battle royal. The carpet, the electrified carpet, everything was designed to dehumanize these young black males and make them act like animals. But if you notice, if you're reading the story, it's really the white men that are behaving like animals, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So yeah, let's talk about that. I guess let's do that next. I put two sets of notes. This set of notes, and then I have another one for you where I just want to point out a couple of things about this South that Ellison is portraying here in this story. So in this new South, this post-Reconstruction South. Okay, so I wanted to talk just a couple more minutes on the idea of his view of the South in this story. I want to talk about the racial inequality in the South, Ellison's version of the South post-Reconstruction. So I want to talk for just a second about these leading white citizens of the town who are supposed to be this lily white shining example in the town. You'll notice that these men were quite tipsy, chasing around the naked woman around the room and touching her with their beefy fingers. They used derogatory vocabulary, and they were hurling insults. They used the N-word. They used the word coon and shine, boy. The author the narrator refers to them as a room full of poisonous cottonmouths, jeering and encouraging the black boys to tear each other from limb to limb and kill each other, threatening them if they stopped. They electrified the mat where they placed the money and then verbally abused the boys to pick up the money. They even throw a boy, an African-American boy, onto the mat to be electrocuted. And so these men, they talk and laugh all during the speech, showing no sign of respect. And the kid is giving this speech, the Invisible Man is giving this speech, and he's talking about social inequality. And one white man speaks up and he says, "We mean to do right by you, but you've got to know your place at all times." And then at the end, one of the white men says, "Someday he'll lead his people in the proper path," which denotes that we're not talking about our people. There's always going to be that difference here. And so this South that Ellison is projecting punishes difference. You have these men, these leading white citizens who are behaving like animals, and all the while claiming some kind of higher authority or higher status than the African Americans that they're using and abusing for sport and for entertainment. And so keep all of that in mind when you start thinking about your upcoming essay, where you're going to compare and contrast the views of the South in Battle Royal as well as the view of the South in A Rose for Emily.